Very quickly, I'm going to show you how you would go in and reinstall the operating system on your virtual machine. Let's say you already installed Red Hat Linux, but you wanted to redo it because your partitions were incorrect or you missed a step. This is how you would do it. You would turn on your virtual machine by clicking the power on button. Then when the first screen comes on, you want to click on it and press escape. Escape brings you to the boot menu, as you can see, and then you want to select CD-ROM. And this is going to boot into your ISO image and load the kernel to start the installation. See, that starts the installation, and then you can go on and continue your installation. Okay, before you do that, you just want to make sure that when your virtual machine is shut down, that the CD-ROM is enabled. So it's the connect on power on is checked, and that the use the ISO image is set to the ISO image, the boot.iso. Okay, so that takes care of that. Then another thing that some of you have had questions about is the activation of the Red Hat subscription. Basically, with Red Hat Enterprise Systems, most users, when they install Red Hat Enterprise, they get a subscription to Red Hat, and this is, I think this costs about it's under $100 for educational institutions, but still what they do is they provide you support. So if you have any problems, you can call them and they support it. And then it also provides you patches and upgrades to different software. But for this class, we're not going to do subscriptions because we don't have 40 subscriptions available for this class. So during first boot, when the screen comes up to create a Red Hat account, you just want to skip it and tell me to wait later or do it later. And once you've installed it, you will notice a couple things. First, you will notice that this subscription alert will come on from time to time, and all you have to do is tell it to do not activate, because we don't want to activate the subscription. And then you want to hit next, and then when this comes on, you want to tell it to never remind me again, and then that way you will never see that anymore. Okay. Another thing that you should notice is this button here, this red button, and this red button is basically the up-to-date program. What it does is it runs in the background and it's always checking to see if your system needs critical updates. But in order to put those critical updates, you need a Red Hat subscription, and since we don't have one, we're gonna just ignore this critical update button for now. In the future, during a later assignment, you're gonna go in and you're actually gonna remove this RPM here, so that you no longer see this. But for now, just leave it there but ignore it. Okay. Now quickly, I'm going to show you another thing. For the first, on week 2, what you have done is you've used the VMware Server Console and you've connected to your virtual machine, and then you install Linux. But for all the assignments in the future, if the assignment does not require a graphical user interface, I think it's a lot better if you go in and you go and use PuTTY, and you PuTTY to the CSC 570E server first, and from there you SSH to your virtual machine. So what you need to do is just go to the VMware Server Console, make sure your virtual machine is powered on and not on suspend mode, and from then on just PuTTY to the CSC 570E server and PuTTY to the and SSH to the IP address of your virtual machine. Let me show you that. First, make sure your virtual machine is on. So mine's on right here, and I'm going to run ifconfig, and I see that the IP address of this virtual machine is 118.183. So I'm going to write that down: 192.168.118.183. Okay. So then once it's on, I can close the VMware Server Console, and all I need now is PuTTY. So first I will PuTTY to csc570e.us.edu, port 22. Log in with my NetID and password. And then from here I can SSH to my virtual machine. I can SSH as root, or I can SSH as student. Since I'm using somebody else's virtual machine for this example, I don't know the root password, so I'm going to use student. So I'm going to do SSH student at 192.168.118.183. but I could have easily used root here if I wanted to. Or I can go in as student and then SU once I'm in if I need to do any maintenance. So then it's going to ask me for the key. I say yes, and then I put the student password, which is also student, and then I'm logged on. Okay. From here, I could do SU and become root if I know the root password and do all my assignment stuff. And I can basically run any command. So for this week's assignment, this is the preferred way that I would recommend you do things, because you will find that the performance is a lot better than using the VMware Server Console. From this time on, the only time you're going to use the VM Server Console is if you need to use a graphical program inside the X Windows. So when we run the X Windows chapter, you would want to do that. And if there are any other graphical tools that you need, then you would do that too. Okay? So that's very important. And then the last thing I want to show you is some of you have forgotten what your root password is. So then how do you go in and change the root password if you've forgotten? Well, what you do is you go to your virtual machine, you power it on, and then when the grab bootloader comes on, you want to press the letter A. Okay? And when you press the letter A, it'll bring you to this screen here, which has RO, read, root equals label equals slash to start in the root, and then R, H, GB, and then quiet. After quiet, you want to put 1 so that it goes into single user mode or run level 1. Then you press enter, and then you wait for the system to come up. Some of you have noticed this this message that you see here, cannot allocate resource region 4 of device. You can ignore that message. That will come up every time you boot, and you can ignore it. It's not going to affect anything. Another thing you need to know is if you want a full screen, you can do in VMware console, you could do Control-Alt-Enter, and that will make the full screen be the virtual machine of your desktop. Okay. Another thing you can do if I click on the screen here in the middle, then my mouse can only stay within this window. And if I want to leave that window, I can do Control-Enter, and now, as you can see, my mouse can leave this window here. So when I click the screen, I'm going to be inside here, inside this window, and if I want to go here and click all other things, I have to press Control-Alt. So it's very important that you know how to escape by using Control-Alt, and that if you want to go full screen, you know how to do it by doing Control-Alt-Enter. Okay? So we're going to wait for this to boot up and start run level 1, and what it's going to do is going to bring me to a shell, and from the shell I can run the passwd command or the password command in Linux and reset my root password. So we'll go ahead and wait a couple more minutes. Now it's initializing the hardware. In a couple seconds, it will bring me to a shell prompt, which is what I want. Okay, so we're going into run level 1. Okay, so now I'm at the shell and I can run the passwd command. If I want to change a particular user's password, I could just do passwd and then the username. But for root, I could just run passwd, then put a new password, enter the new password again, and now I've reset my root password. Okay, so this is what you would do. Usually single user mode is very useful when you need to install software or when you need to do any maintenance and you don't want any other users to be logged on, because single user mode, basically, it only allows the user on the console to access the system.